Welcome to Beyond the Corporate Ladder, thoughtful conversations on leadership, growth, and long-term perspective with your host, Stephen Lee Thomas. Each episode features thoughtful conversations with leaders and operators about growth, decision-making, and what it really looks like to build a meaningful life as your career evolves. Hello, and welcome back to Beyond the Corporate Ladder. Today, my guest is Adam Gower. Now, Adam Gower has an amazing background. He's got some background in the corporate America, but he's also been very active in the multifamily space for a while. So he has some fantastic mindset shifts for us, and I want to explore those today on. So, Adam, thank you so much for joining the call today.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me, Stephen. It's nice to be here.
Adam, can you give us a little bit more about your background?
Yes, so in the context of what we're talking about today, I'll fast forward to my corporate background. So I actually started as an electrician, pulling wires, actually as an apprentice electrician, got into raising capital for a privately held ground up multifamily shop in Southern California in the 90s. It's a long time ago, 80s, 1980s, so a long time ago. And
As
then
an
during the
electrician, you
night,
were doing that? You were helping to raise capital as an electrician?
no, I stopped being an
Oh, okay.
electrician
Gotcha.
and
Okay.
took a position at a multifamily, ground up multifamily shop.
Gotcha. Okay.
But that's how I learned the real estate business was very much hands-on, basically, by pulling wires, like literally. So, but in the 90s, I was hired as president and CEO of a division of a joint venture of Universal Studios and Paramount Studios based in Tokyo, developing their real estate across Asia Pacific. And that was a very corporate environment.
Oh, wow.
Basically two public companies at the time, or they were both held by public companies. So my reporting went all the way up the chain, actually up two chains to both parent companies, and that was in the 90s.
Okay. So, man, that's like I'm jealous I don't have that background because that sounds like it would be like a phenomenal experience to probably help you get to where you're at today.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at how your career's unfolded and where you're at now, what do you feel has contributed most to your success?
Dogged perseverance and systematic research and analysis of new environments. So I'll give you an example.
Sure.
The first thing so when I was first hired in Tokyo to run this division, the division was primarily focused, not entirely, but primarily, my job was primarily focused on building large-scale multiplex movie theaters across Asia Pacific, particularly in Japan. I knew nothing about this business. I'd actually been consulting to the guy who I replaced. So I did have some basic understanding, but no deep understanding. So when I took the position, what I learned was that you can learn 80 to 90% of everything that you need to know about a new industry or a new vertical in 90 days, if you do it properly. And then it takes you the rest of your life to learn the rest. That was kind of my experience of it. So what I did in the first 3 months was when I started, it was just me and a secretary. When I finished, I don't know how many staff we, 150 staff or so, 6 direct reports. It was a major operation by the time I finished building this thing. But what I did in the first 3 months was I took every single meeting. Anybody that wanted to meet me, I said yes to 100% of everything. And they were
Okay.
mostly inbound requests. And in doing that, I was able to understand who were the key people, that were going to drive the business, who were my key contacts that were going to drive the business going forwards. And the other thing that I also had to do in that period, which was another realization, was that the core of any business, to understand any business, are twofold. One, it's financials, it's economics, so it's P&Ls, and two, it's contracts, the contracts that it uses with with vendors or with landlords in the
Hmm.
real estate world. So if you have access to both of those, you can really understand the DNA of how any business works. And keep in mind that I mean, just adding an extra layer of complexity for me, it was all in Japanese. I had to do everything in Japanese. So I had to read contracts in Japanese. I had to negotiate contracts in Japanese. I dealt with Japanese staff in many cases. They only spoke Japanese. So there was that extra layer. But from a corporate perspective, there was those two things that really, those three things: getting to know the landscape and meeting
Uh-huh,
everybody that
uh-huh.
counted, understanding how all the contracts worked up and down the enterprise, and thirdly, what the economics look like in the projections and the way these buildings operated.
That's amazing that you got to go through that journey, and it sounds like you've had to learn Japanese along the way, probably, right?
I did. Well, by the time I'd learned already, I dedicated, I did full immersion Japanese when I got to Tokyo. So it took me
Okay.
about 6 months to get to daily proficiency and then another year maybe to reach business capability.
So you basically were kind of like a ground up, right? There's a lot that you built along the way.
Yeah.
So thinking back to your early days, and you broke down some of the things that you learned to look at from a decision making standpoint, from where you were then. You said, "Hey, man, I took every single call." Like, how has your process of decision making changed, especially in today's world? I mean, so much has changed. You said back in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
So like if you look at just technology, like we have so many tools at our fingertips. How has your decision making changed between then and now?
Gosh, decision making. Well, probably the tools that I use today have changed. The decision-making process, I don't know, I'd have to really think that through, but I'm not sure that that's changed very much. It's access to information and to data, the accuracy and the volume, and the ability to analyze vast amounts of data today much, much quicker
Hmm.
than I was
Hmm.
able to then that really facilitates decision making. I remember using, for example, like, today you drag and drop something into any one of the LLMs and you can have a conversation with it in incredible depth. Of
Right.
course, 30 years ago, was it really 30 years ago? Close to 30 years ago when I was in Tokyo, there was none of that, obviously. And so I keep forgetting what it's Access. Microsoft Access is a database tool. So our entire front of house revenue and operations were all processed using Access. So it was just this massive database that came out of the POSs and from our operations, everything just plowed into Access. So I created even then, not automations, but I created analytics that took that raw data and created data that I could actually use. Like how many people do we have on staff at certain peak times? What does that do to revenue? Can we optimize in some way? How do we optimize revenues? But it was much more of a manual process. Whereas today I could just drag and drop and have a conversation. So I imagine my decision making process certainly today would be considerably faster and probably a lot more precise. Even
Okay.
though we were very successful, there was just a lot of work, and I was the only person that could do it because I knew what I wanted to see in terms of the data, so that I could manage the business effectively. So it was a lot more time consuming then than it was now. By the way, when I walked into the office the first time, we had an accountant. I'm totally serious about this. The accountant walked in, and I've still got it actually. I think I asked him if I could have it, and he gave me one, or I bought one or something. He actually used an abacus. He used an
Really?
abacus calculator. It was crazy to see it. Yeah, he had this
There will be
abacus.
people
Unfortunately, I
listening to,
don't have
well,
it
probably the
here.
people listening to this know what an abacus is, but I guarantee you if I go to my kids, they have no idea what an abacus is.
An abacus. Well, they should do. They're really cool, actually. I don't know. And then I would expect probably 99.9% of people listening wouldn't know how to use
I
one.
don't know how to use one. I know what they look like. I know that you move stuff around and count, but I can be honest, I do not know how to use an
This
abacus.
guy was insane, Stephen. When I talked to him about numbers, he would pull this thing out and he did this thing and it just sounded like as he moved these things around and gave
Uh-huh,
the
uh-huh.
answer. It was almost as fast as using a spreadsheet. But anyway, so it was a, and I have one. I have one as a souvenir just to remind me of those days.
That's
So
awesome.
tech is what has really moved the needle on decision-making processes.
So, okay, you obviously clearly you're a very analytical person, and what if I got this right, what's changed is not so much what you base your decisions on, it's but you can make faster decisions more accurately with more data, is what I'm hearing you say. Like
Yeah, and
that's
easy.
probably fundamentally what shifted.
Well, yeah, the access, the data is probably still the same. It's the way that you actually analyze it that has fundamentally changed, and the speed with which you can do that. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly that.
So along the way, I heard I was attending a webinar or not a webinar, an actual conference in person. And
Mm.
there was a lady who was presenting and she was Air Force. And one of the concepts she shared, and I might get this a little bit wrong, but basically there's like an 80% rule for decision making and moving forward, which is essentially if you strive for perfection before you ever take that first step or move forward, that last 20-15% can be really hard. But if you're feeling relatively comfortable and you've got 80% of the data points are pointing in the right direction, then it's like it's time to start moving in that direction. How do you feel about that? Is that you try to get a little bit tighter than that, or you think that's fair to
No,
start moving forward?
I actually approach such scenarios somewhat differently. So I like to field test new ideas.
Okay,
So if we've
okay.
got a new idea, rather than, and by the way, I've learned this the hard way. I mean, we built digital marketing systems that are very heavily AI integrated these days. Primarily, or initially, we were doing it to help sponsors raise capital, but now we're really supporting sponsors up and down the entire process from deal screening to acquisitions to operations to
Mhm.
exit and capital formation as well, of course. So in part of that process is and what I've learned is that what we used to do and still do, unfortunately, to some extent these days, is to build systems that are close to being as perfect as possible, and then pushing them out to see if they work. But that's very time consuming
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
very inefficient because 9 times out of 10, what we test will fail. So we'll only have one win. So what I do these days is we go with what the venture world calls an MVP, minimum viable product,
Right.
and we will push it out and test to see how well it works. And if it works well, then we add layers of improvement to it. And there's never going to be perfect. There is always evolution, the idea of continual improvement.
Mhm.
In fact, that was something from my corporate world that I also implemented and still do today. So I think I said 6 direct reports. I think it was 5 direct reports. So I had verticals beneath me who were all headed by VPs. And each one of those I provided them with resources and guidance on where we were headed and let them have at it. And then what I did, and so I gave them everything. When I had, so again, I started with nobody. I was the only
Mhm.
person. So I hired people. So I did all the work. Then I hired people. And when they came in, I literally gave them a folder. I said, this is what I've been working on. This is your job. Figure it out and let me know what questions you've got. And then I gave them all the resources that they needed. So they would go off and do that because I was CEO. I then had to do the same with the next vertical and then the next
Hmm.
vertical
Hmm.
and so on
Hmm.
and so forth. And so once I'd brought on all the key people headcount that I needed, I would then go round each one on a systematic basis and explore ways of making their job easier, more effective, more productive. So we would look for initially it was they were larger improvement steps, but as we got better and better each time I went round the heads, these direct reports, the improvements would be increasingly incremental, but we
Okay.
always searched for them, ways of improving the process to enhance the bottom line by either reducing costs or increasing revenues. So it was the term in Japanese is it's called Kaizen, the process of continual improvement. So that's how I did it then. That's how I do it now. Get something out the door, put it to work, and then return, look how it's performing, either kill it if it's not working properly
Hmm.
or double down on it if it is.
Awesome. So your corporate background in the iterative approach, that's something that you're using now in your own business, right? That's
Mhm.
something you mentioned using the doing the MVPs and pushing that out and getting that feedback quickly, correct?
Yes, exactly.
So with that now, so what is it that you're really focused on in your career where you're at now that you weren't so much before? Like where is this evolution really taking you?
Well, so I think the evolution that is taking me, and in fact the rest of the world, is AI, artificial intelligence. I've been researching AI in commercial real estate for the last year. We're about to launch uh, a new uh, a new program, a new platform, some new services. And that's because it is having such a revolutionary change. It's impacting. You just cannot imagine how fundamental the transformation is until you actually see it in action. And I'm not talking about just Chat GPT, to help write an email, right? Whatever
Right,
kind
right,
of
right.
trivial tasks people use it for, but actual fundamental shifts in the way that the business is being operated. So you cannot ignore that. And my business, the way I see it, is that we build these marketing systems that have helped our clients raise over $1 billion in equity, right, with minimums as low as 25,000. But all we really do is build, is uh, set up software. When you think about it, you build it, but strip it down to its to its core. We have a suite of software, right? A kind of a tech stack
Hmm.
that we know works exceptionally well for capital formation. And we build out each one of those components to create workflows for both our clients and for their investors to be able to raise money and invest uh, um, uh, respectively, right? So really all we are software operators. We're just very good at using software effectively. I mean, there's more to it than just the technical side.
Hmm.
What
Hmm.
goes into the systems in terms of the positioning, the language that you use, the kind of content that you use, etc., is the fine art. But at its core, we're just building using software. And what that means is that really anyone could do it, right? If you wanted to save the money, you could do it yourself. In fact, I run training that shows you how to do it yourself, right? But people hire us because they don't want to do it themselves. They want to have somebody else build the machine and run it for them. Well, the same applies to AI, right? When you see some of these solutions, it's overwhelming. The speed with which AI is changing the world, the speed with which they each of the different LLMs are upgrading and the new
Hmm.
features that they have, the new LLMs, the new resources. I mean, it is totally overwhelming. So what I am doing is intensive research and identifying best practices and then rolling that out to clients. what's fundamentally different, though, Stephen, today than has ever been before. I'm going to ask you a question. You almost certainly use Excel. Well, can you remember how long ago it was you first used Excel?
I'm
Approximately.
thinking approximately when I first used Excel, probably 35 years ago, maybe. Like
Okay,
it's
so
been
I
a
don't
long
even
time.
remember when it came out. I
Yeah.
was just about to look it up. I think
Yeah.
35 years might be pushing it a bit. I remember the
When did
first
it
was
come out?
Lotus
Well,
Notes, I think. It was like Lotus. And then
okay, maybe that's right. So I'm just thinking back to when I first started getting into the computer stuff was I was in college, and so it was like very late 90s, early 2000s.
85. So Excel came out in 85,
Okay, so maybe I
right?
did use it. Maybe I did use it
30,
35 years
30
ago.
years ago.
Yes.
No,
Okay.
90, yeah, 40 years ago. Okay, it's a long time ago. So you may well have done. But here's the point. Chances are the way that you use it today has not evolved very much in that 40 years, right? I mean, there's some
No, no.
sophistication. You've
Yes,
learned some
yes,
new
yes. Have I learned some more
formulas.
formulas? Yes, but fundamentally,
Fundamentally, it's the
no.
same.
Yeah, it's the same.
Cannot do that with AI. With software that used to exist, most of the software, this is why you're seeing so much concern in Wall Street about the impact of AI on software, is that software is generally static. You'll get upgrades, and most of the time they're, excuse my language, they're bloody annoying because some techie over there, some engineers decided you're better off doing it this way than that. So you've got to kind of relearn the dashboard and how it looks, etc. But the functionality is still there, and it's still basically the same. So you learn it once and that's it, right? There's really not much you need to do after that. AI is totally different. It's changing all the time. So you have to continually learn what is going on in the world and know how to apply it in an efficient way. And it is overwhelming. How do you know where to even start? I can list, I don't know, half a dozen LLMs. I mean,
Right.
all the kind of your core tools. That there's new ones coming out. Each one is becoming more and more advanced every single day. Plus, on top of that, there's a bunch of startups that are also creating tools and resources that you can use. So what's really shifted from your first question was about decision making. My answer was it all depends on the input and how you get the inputs to be able to make better, clearer, more better decisions.
Right.
So staying on top of that process with AI is a continual process. At some point, who knows? Maybe it ends at some point when the machines just do everything. But for the time being, to stay ahead, you've just got to stay up on a almost daily basis to be able to beat out the competition.
Yeah, you have to continue to be engaged, be using AI somewhere somehow. And I think you need to remain curious with it and not accept it. And then there's one other thing. Um I I want to hear your perspective on this because since we went over to the AI space.
Mm,
So there's this my wife works at the university, and so AI is a very interesting topic at the university.
mm,
And so I've heard her share where you could have someone go into college and they're like, "Hey, ChatGPT or whatever LLM, write me this thesis paper, okay?" And the AI will do it, right? Like it'll do it. It'll give you some output. But where I think we as users, and this I think to fall in the education system in of itself, but I'd love your perspective. Just because I can tell the AI write me a paper doesn't mean it's going to actually be good. I think it's getting better, but the critical thinking skills to be able to look at it and say, "Hey, I need you to tweak this. Hey, I need to do that," and actually is the output where it needs to be. So, your thoughts on how do we apply the critical thinking skills and not lose that and turn over all of our free agency is not the right word, but just turn over all of our decision making to AI. I don't think that's the right thing to do. So how do you think that we should be positioning ourselves to leverage it and not turn everything over to AI?
Because it's a tool. It's a tool. I see it, I just see it as a tool. I built some agents that are doing
Mhm.
grunt work for me in background. I mean, it's just incredible productivity tool. The way that I use it is exactly like that, is like having an analyst in house, or but to your point, to get the best output, you have to understand how to communicate well, actually,
Mhm.
and clearly. You can easily say, here, I need to write a report on banking in the early 20th century and how did banks underwrite risk. All right, so okay, fine. So it'll come up with something rather like, so actually was my PhD thesis.
Okay.
And it probably come up with something halfway decent, or at least it's come up with a good first draft. But you really have to be able to communicate with it. It's like hiring an intern who's very, very bright, but doesn't know what you want, doesn't know, what your positioning is, the way you see the world, what kind of context, what the objective is. So if you give them random instructions, you're going to get random responses. So the critical thinking, actually, I mean, I haven't really articulated or even thought of it this way until right now. But really, the way that I'm relating to it is almost as though one has to become a better, a better manager of teams, and one has to elevate one's communication skills. So actually, the critical thinking component is enhanced because you're forced to think more critically. You're forced to think more sequentially, right? How does this process actually roll out from one step to the next in order to be able to get to the end result? So you're not, right? Whereas before you would have a task and then you just kind of have at it.
Yeah.
Now, in order to be effective with AI, you really do have to break it down into incremental pieces that all run together. And so you have to be able to think that way as
Right.
well.
Yeah. 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 I think that there's, I've seen some where I see conversations going on and it's clearly just people sending AI conversations back and forth, right? Like I kind of feel like some people are a little bit losing touch of some of that communication. But yeah, I think if you're using it right, to your point, you've got to be a better critical thinker to break it down into its smaller pieces because the more you can get that granular with AI, the superior results you're going to get.
Well, the
Um,
other thing is this. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no,
You
no,
had a
no, no,
question.
no. Go ahead. Go ahead. Get your thought out.
Well, the other thing is that, there's so much. I mean, it's overwhelming. I just pulled together. We are tracking close to 200 startups, 200 CRE startups in the AI space. Well, how do you track that? So step so understanding how to do that efficiently is actually quite a challenge. So I figured it out yesterday. I built an agent that has signed me up for every single newsletter from all of those, every single email list from all of them. It comes into my inbox. It goes into a folder. I use another agent to analyze and give me a summary. So how did I do that? Well, I had to understand, first of all, that the capacity was there.
Hmm.
Then I had to be prepared to figure out how to use the thing. And it's not easy. It takes time. It took me an entire day to build one agent yesterday. I shouldn't even admit that. It's actually, that's why I leave Mondays and Fridays open, is that
But
I
I
can.
think you should. That's an important thing, Adam, because like I can go build an agent and I can go chat GPT, hey, write me the prompt for this, okay? And it can spit it out. But
Mhm.
going back to what you're just saying, I think you probably should, if you really want an effective agent or something, you probably should spend a day. Like, what's wrong with spending 20 hours building a really dialed in agent? What's wrong with that? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think that that's probably, I think you spent the right amount of time. In my personal opinion, I think that is a differentiator. You're applying critical thinking, whereas someone will be like, this is cool. I'll just run with it. Fair?
Well, and you'll get decent, you might, well, for that, because it's actually sending emails on my behalf.
Yeah.
is a little bit more advanced. Google won't do that. So not Google. ChatGPT won't do that. Most of
Sure.
them won't. Some do. But yeah, it's just understand being inquisitive, creative, and willing to accept that whatever you learn today will be outdated tomorrow, right?
Right.
Is it's a fundamental shift actually in the way, at least I think, and the way that one needs to think about how the world is changing. It's changing that fast.
It's changing very fast. So, Adam, I appreciate you spending time on the show today. As
So,
we're wrapping up,
mhm.
one idea or perspective you'd want someone listening to think about after this conversation?
Okay, that's a broad, open-ended question. So what would I think? Well, there's two. I think there's two. I'm not sure if we really touched your corporate world to the private world discussion particularly. We really kind of focused on AI, but I think that
You
the
know, a lot
key.
of these conversations end up jumping around in AI.
Yeah,
It's like you
right.
can't have a conversation on the street corner without having AI jump into the conversation.
All
It just
right, or
happens.
even
Yeah.
watch the Super Bowl, right? Okay, so I would say that probably the most important superpower that anybody can have today is going to be twofold: an inquisitive mind and creativity. To enjoy learning uh, on a constant basis, to just get back to ongoing deep learning and enjoy the creativity that forces you into, rather than being intimidated by this wall of change. Embrace it, enjoy it, and explore it. Really, learn constantly. That would be the biggest takeaway, I think, today. And that actually applies at any time, but particularly today.
I love it, Adam. Thank you so much for joining today. Someone that wants to connect with you or learn a little bit more about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Thank you for asking. So the best way is to go to GowerCrowd.com. That's my website, GOWER crowd, GowerCrowd.com. And I have a newsletter, free newsletter that really covers all these topics, as well as provides. So it took me 8 hours yesterday to figure out how to build this agent. I just sent a video of how to do it to one of my clients that lasted less than 2 minutes. So if you want to be able to do 8 hours work in 2 minutes, my newsletter is the place to be.
Awesome. Adam, again, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Stephen. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for spending time with me today on Beyond the Corporate Ladder. If this conversation resonated with you and you feel like you have a perspective that could add value for others, you can learn more about being a guest at beyondthecorporateladder.com. Thanks so much for listening.